Red Bull just found out that the contract they signed 4 years ago is the one that might end their dynasty. There is a clause buried in Max Verstappen's deal, and it is not a rumor, not a whisper, not a negotiating tactic. It is a legal mechanism confirmed by multiple sources including the race, ESPN and Sky Sports F1. And after just 3 races of the 2026 season, everything needed to trigger it is already in place. But here is the real problem. The clause was written before a single 2026 car had ever turned a wheel. Which means someone already knew this was coming. The 2026 Formula One season should have been a coronation, 4 consecutive world championships, a brand new era of regulations, a fresh power unit built in partnership with Ford. The narrative was set. Instead, after Australia, China and Japan, Verstappen sits 9th in the Drivers' Championship with 12 points. The championship leader, Mercedes rookie Kimi Antonelli, has 72. The gap to second place is 51 points. There is no mathematical path to the top 2 by the summer break. None. And without a top 2 position at the summer break, Verstappen is contractually free to leave Red Bull before his deal expires in 2028. Here is what the clause actually says, because the details matter more than the headlines suggest. Verstappen's contract runs until the end of 2028, but embedded within it is a performance-based exit mechanism that resets every season. In 2025, that threshold was top 3 in the championship by the summer break. Verstappen finished 3rd, just outside the trigger, and stayed. For 2026, the threshold was quietly tightened. To leave, he only needs to be outside the top 2. Second place, or lower, and the door opens. Sky Sports F1's Simon Lazenby was the first broadcaster to confirm the specific number. If Verstappen is 2nd or worse in the standings by the time the paddock breaks for summer, he can walk. He is currently 9th. Now watch this, because this is where the story changes shape. ESPN reported that the 2026 clause was not inserted because Red Bull had a bad 2025. It was inserted specifically, their word, due to Verstappen's long-standing apprehension about the 2026 regulations. Think about what that means. Years before the cars were built, before a single lap was turned, before Ford had delivered a single component, Verstappen's management team sat across a table from Red Bull and said, "We are concerned about what this regulation era will produce." And Red Bull, needing Verstappen more than he needed them, agreed. They signed their own contingency. They wrote the escape route themselves. That is not bad luck. That is negotiating from a position of complete power. And nobody has really talked about that side of this story. To understand why Verstappen hates these regulations and why that hatred matters, you need to understand what actually changed in 2026. Picture a car at full racing speed, engine screaming, all systems green. In previous generations of F1, the driver's job was almost entirely about pace. Push harder, find more time, extract more from the tyres. The car wanted to go fast. The driver's role was to make it go faster. Now imagine the same car, but this time it has a battery that powers half the car's total output, and that battery is constantly being drained and recharged. When it is full, the car erupts forward with power you can barely control. When it is empty, the car slows itself down automatically, what the engineers call superclipping, harvesting energy back from the kinetic force of the car to refill the battery before the next deployment. The driver did not ask the car to slow, the car decided to slow itself. This part matters more than it sounds. It means that at certain points on certain circuits, you have one car doing 250 kilometers per hour, while the car behind it has effectively put itself into recovery mode at 200. The speed delta created by different battery states can be 50, 60 kilometers per hour, appearing in fractions of a second with no warning. That is not a racing variable. That is a hazard. Verstappen called it mushroom mode after Japan, the Mario Kart reference resonating instantly with a generation of fans who grew up hammering the speed boost on Rainbow Road. But the joke landed because the reality behind it was not funny at all. At Suzuka, Haas driver Ollie Bearman hit the barriers at 50 gravities. The stewards found no blame. The FIA found no blame. But the sequence of events involved a car slowing to recharge ahead of Bearman and a speed differential that left no time to react. That is the safety consequence of the very technology Verstappen has been demanding changes to since before the season began. Red Bull's problems go deeper than the regulation architecture, though. This is their first season as an independent power unit manufacturer, a partnership with Ford that was supposed to define a new era of competitiveness. The results from the first 3 weekends suggested the opposite. Verstappen retired from the Chinese Grand Prix with a power unit cooling failure. Rookie teammate Isak Hadjar retired in Australia with engine-related issues. Red Bull team principal Laurent Mekies publicly acknowledged significant shortcomings in the car's performance package. Verstappen described the RB22 as completely undrivable on his way out of qualifying in Japan, knocked out of Q2 not by a Mercedes or Ferrari, but by Red Bull's own junior driver from Racing Bulls. In 4 consecutive seasons, Verstappen won the World Championship from this team. He crossed the line at Suzuka 4 years in a row. He won there. He dominated there. This year he qualified 11th. And he already had an exit clause ready to go. But here is the thing that makes this story genuinely complicated. Verstappen is not being pushed out. He is not being betrayed. Red Bull have rallied around him publicly, Mekies insisting the sole focus of the entire factory is building a car worthy of their driver. The relationship appears intact. Verstappen himself flew Mekies and his longtime race engineer Giampiero Lambiase home on his private jet after China, a gesture that, according to ESPN sources, was completely unprecedented. A frank summit between a driver and his team to work through a crisis together. This is not the breakdown of a partnership, it is the stress testing of one. And the question that Verstappen is sitting with right now is not whether he trusts Red Bull, it is whether he trusts Formula One. His exact words to BBC Sport after Japan said everything. Every day I wake up, I convince myself again. And I try. That is not what winning sounds like. That is what endurance sounds like. Subscribe now. Dimension of this story that the mainstream coverage has largely missed is the institutional problem it reveals. Verstappen is the best driver on the grid. He is 28 years old, he has 4 world championships, missed a 5th by 2 points in the final race of 2025, and is widely regarded as operating in a different tier to almost every other current competitor. And he genuinely does not enjoy driving these cars. Not because of his results, he made that point explicitly to BBC Sport, anticipating the obvious criticism. Not because the car is slow. Because the act of driving them, the sensation of them, the demands they place on him, have replaced everything he loved about the sport with something he does not recognise. What happens when the best player in the game stops wanting to play? The FIA and F1's commercial rights holders are aware of the problem. There have been regulation summits. The FIA reduced energy recovery limits from 9 megajoules to 8 between rounds, trying to address superclipping. Verstappen said it was not nearly enough. He wants a full reversal of the electrification direction, a demand that carries enormous political weight because Audi and Honda committed to the sport specifically because of the increased electrification these regulations represent. You cannot simply undo the rules without potentially losing 2 manufacturers. Verstappen's preferences and F1's commercial architecture are pulling in directly opposite directions. And Toto Wolff is sitting quietly at the end of that tension, with the fastest car on the grid and a seat that could be offered before the summer break deadline. The contract mechanics now take on a life of their own. Verstappen does not need to notify Red Bull of his decision until October. That means he has the entirety of the second half of the 2026 season, assuming he is still racing, to observe whether the regulations evolve, whether Red Bull close the gap, and whether any credible path to a 5th championship exists. If not at Red Bull, then at Mercedes. If not in F1, then somewhere else entirely. And this is where the sabbatical option becomes the most quietly dangerous scenario for Formula One. Verstappen could step away from racing while remaining a Red Bull brand ambassador, honoring the commercial relationship without sitting in the cockpit. He could race GT3 cars, build his own team, take on the Nürburgring, chase the projects he has spoken about with genuine warmth in a season where almost nothing at the front has produced genuine warmth. He would leave the door open. He would not close it. And F1 would have to wait. Returns from sabbaticals happen. Schumacher did it, Alonso did it, Rickman did it. But those were different eras, different leverage structures, different competitive landscapes. If Verstappen walks away and F1 cannot put together a regulation overhaul compelling enough to bring him back, that door stays shut. And when it does, a generation that grew up watching him redefine what dominance in the sport could look like will have to make peace with the fact that the best driver of his era left before his time. The exit clause is already active. The standings already satisfy its conditions. The decision window runs from August to October. Everything is in place. Everything was put in place years ago by a management team that looked at the 2026 regulations on paper and quietly decided to protect their driver from something they suspected would not be worth staying for. The only question left is not whether Verstappen can leave. The question is whether Formula One can give him a reason to stay.